You know what I realized sitting around an Amish family's kitchen table in Lancaster County? These people have figured out something the rest of us forgot decades ago. While we're ordering takeout and heating up frozen meals, they're creating dishes that taste like they come straight from heaven. I'm talking about food so simple, so honest, so absolutely delicious, that it makes everything else seem like we've been eating cardboard our whole lives. And here's the thing that really got me. None of these dishes require fancy techniques or hard-to-find ingredients. You've probably got most of what you need in your pantry right now. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 10 Amish dishes that changed how I think about cooking. And by the end, you'll understand why these recipes have survived for over 300 years without a single change. I'll be honest with you, before I spent time in Amish country, I thought their food would be boring. Simple, basic, nothing to write home about. I was completely wrong. Walking into that first kitchen in Holmes County, Ohio, the smell hit me like a wall. Not the kind of smell you get from a restaurant or from following some complicated recipe. This was different. It was warm bread cooling on the counter. It was butter melting into something. It was what home actually smells like when it's made with care instead of convenience. The woman of the house, Sarah, she didn't greet me with fanfare or explanation. She just pointed to a chair at the table and set down a plate. And I sat there, this outsider from the city, tasting something that shouldn't have been a single dish, made the way it had been made for 200 years. And it was better than dishes I'd paid $50 for in restaurants with white tablecloths and French names. That's when I started asking questions. Real questions. Not about techniques or secret ingredients, but about why these dishes work the way they do. And what I learned over the next couple of years completely changed how I cook at home. Because Amish cooking isn't complicated. It's the opposite. It's what happens when you strip away everything unnecessary and keep only what matters. Only what tastes good. Only what feeds people the way food is supposed to feed them. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 10 dishes that made me understand this. And I'm going to give you everything you need to make them yourself. These aren't fusion recipes or modernized versions. These are the real thing. The dishes that have been keeping Amish families healthy and happy for generations. And once you taste them, once you understand how simple they really are, you'll wonder why you ever complicated food in the first place. The first dish I'm going to show you is called shoofly pie. And I want to be straight with you right from the start. The name sounds like something a kid made up, shoofly, like you're trying to get flies away from something. And there's actually truth to that name. Back in the day, when Amish families were baking these pies, they'd have to literally shoo the flies away from the molasses filling, because it was so sweet and so aromatic that every insect in a mile radius wanted a piece of it. But that's not what matters here. What matters is the pie itself. Shofly pie is a single crust filled with a mixture of molasses and brown sugar and spices, and then topped with a crumb topping that's unlike anything you've had. It's not a crumble in the way you might be thinking. It's denser than that. It's more like a wet cake batter mixture that bakes into something that's simultaneously crumbly and slightly moist and absolutely addictive. The filling stays thick and rich and almost creamy underneath all those crumbs. I've tried making shoofly pie with different molasses, different brown sugars, trying to improve on it somehow. Every time I step backwards, the simplicity is what makes it work. Here's how you make it. You need a single unbaked pie crust in a 9-inch pie pan. For the filling, combine 1 cup of molasses, 3/4 cup of hot water, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Pour that right into the pie shell. For the topping, mix together 1½ cups of flour, 1 cup of brown sugar, a 1/4 cup of softened butter, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Work this together with your fingertips until it looks like coarse breadcrumbs. Sprinkle it evenly over the molasses filling. Bake at 350 degrees for 50 to 60 minutes until the top is golden and the filling is set, but still slightly jiggly in the center. That last part is important. You want that filling to stay rich and custard-like, not completely solid. The second dish changed my understanding of what vegetables can do when you stop trying to make them fancy. It's called creamed corn, but calling it creamed corn doesn't do it justice. It sounds like something from a casserole dish at a potluck, but the Amish version is something entirely different. The corn you use for this has to be fresh. Real fresh. The kind you pick and cook within hours of picking, because the sugar in corn starts converting to starch the minute it comes off the plant. You cut the kernels from the cob, about 6 cups of corn, and you combine it in a heavy pot with 1 cup of heavy cream. 4 tablespoons of butter, 1 teaspoon of salt, and a quarter teaspoon of black pepper. Some families add a pinch of sugar if the corn is less sweet than it should be, but good corn doesn't need it. You cook this over medium heat, stirring frequently, for about 15 to 20 minutes until the corn is tender and the cream has thickened slightly. That's it, nothing else. No flour for thickening, no weird ingredients, just corn and cream and butter allowed to be what they are. The magic is in the simplicity and in using ingredients at their peak. When I make this in August with corn from the farmer's market that was picked that morning, it's transcendent. It tastes like summer in a bowl, and there's something about sitting down to food like this that makes you realize how much of what we eat the rest of the year is just going through the motions. The third dish is something most people have never heard of unless they grew up Amish or spent significant time around Amish communities. It's called chicken corn soup, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you think you don't like soup, this dish might change your mind, because this isn't the kind of soup where you're basically eating hot water with some vegetables floating in it. This is a soup that's substantial enough to be a meal. You start with a whole chicken, the kind you'd buy for roasting, and you put it in a large pot with 8 cups of water and 1 teaspoon of salt. Bring it to a boil, then reduce heat and simmer for about an hour until the chicken is completely cooked through and the meat is falling off the bones. Remove the chicken, let it cool slightly, then shred the meat and discard the bones. Strain the broth to remove any debris. You should have about 6 cups of broth left. Return the broth to the pot and add 6 cups of corn, the kernels cut fresh from the cob, along with 2 cups of diced potatoes, 1 large diced onion, 2 stalks of celery diced, and 2 tablespoons of salt. Simmer this for about 30 minutes until the vegetables are tender. Return the shredded chicken to the pot. In a separate bowl, whisk together 2 eggs, and slowly pour them into the hot soup while stirring constantly. The eggs will cook into thin ribbons throughout the soup. Add a quarter cup of fresh parsley at the end. Serve it hot with fresh bread on the side. What struck me about this soup the first time I had it was how restorative it felt, not in the abstract way that people talk about comfort food, but actually restorative. Like your body recognized this as real nourishment and appreciated it. The Amish serve this soup year-round, but in the summer, when corn is abundant, it becomes a staple on tables. The fourth dish is called pepper cabbage, and it's one of those recipes that sounds simple on paper but tastes like someone spent hours developing it. This is a side dish that the Amish serve with almost every meal, and once you understand how to make it, you'll understand why. It's a combination of fresh cabbage and sweet peppers braised together with vinegar and sugar and spices until they're tender and slightly sweet and slightly tangy all at once. To make it, slice about half a head of green cabbage into thin ribbons, dice to bell peppers, red or green, or a combination. Heat 4 tablespoons of butter in a large skillet over medium heat and add the cabbage and peppers along with 1 diced onion. Cook this, stirring occasionally, for about 8 to 10 minutes until the vegetables start to soften. Then add 1/3 cup of vinegar, 1/3 cup of water, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, and a quarter teaspoon of black pepper. Reduce the heat to low and cook for another 20 to 30 minutes, stirring occasionally until everything is very tender and the liquid has reduced slightly. The flavor develops as it cooks. The harshness of the vinegar mellows. The sweetness of the peppers comes forward. The cabbage becomes tender enough that it's almost melting on your tongue. This is the kind of side dish that makes you eat more vegetables than you planned to, because it's genuinely delicious, not because you're trying to be healthy. The fifth dish is called shredded chicken, and I put this on the list because once you taste Amish-style shredded chicken, you'll never make it the conventional way again. This isn't shredded chicken as a component in other recipes. This is a dish in itself. It's chicken that's been cooked in such a way that it's incredibly tender and flavorful and served with a gravy that ties everything together. You take a whole chicken and place it in a large pot with water to just cover it, along with 1 tablespoon of salt and 1 large sliced onion. Bring it to a boil, then reduce the heat and simmer for about an hour and a half until the chicken is completely tender and the meat falls off the bones easily. Remove the chicken and let it cool slightly, then shred all the meat, discarding the bones and skin. Strain the broth and return 6 cups of it to the pot. Bring it back to a boil. In a separate bowl, whisk together 4 tablespoons of cornstarch or flour with 1 cup of cold water until smooth. Slowly pour this mixture into the boiling broth, stirring constantly. Until the gravy thickens, Add the shredded chicken back to the pot, along with 2 teaspoons of salt and half a teaspoon of black pepper. You can serve this over mashed potatoes, over egg noodles, over bread, or really over anything that will soak up the gravy. The chicken itself is so tender that it dissolves slightly into the gravy. The 6th dish brings us to something called apple butter. And I want to be clear about something right from the start. Apple butter isn't butter in any conventional sense. It's not dairy. It's essentially apples that have been cooked down for hours until they become this thick, dark, intensely apple-flavored paste that's slightly sweet and slightly spiced and completely addictive on fresh bread. Making apple butter is not a quick process. This is the kind of recipe that teaches you something about Amish culture just in the doing of it. You peel and core about 12 to 15 medium apples and cut them into chunks. Put them in a large heavy pot with 1 cup of apple cider or apple juice, a 1/4 cup of vinegar, 1 cup of sugar, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of cloves, and a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Bring this to a boil, then reduce heat to low and let it simmer, stirring occasionally, for about 4 to 5 hours. The apples will break down gradually, and the mixture will become darker and thicker and more concentrated. You know it's done when it's thick enough that a wooden spoon dragged through it leaves a trail. That doesn't immediately fill back in. The flavor at this point is incredibly intense. Pure apple, but amplified and deepened by the long cooking and the spices. The Amish make huge batches of this in fall and preserve it in jars to eat all year long. I've started doing the same thing because once you've had real apple butter, the store-bought version tastes like disappointment. The 7th dish is something called noodle soup, and I know that sounds vague and generic, but Amish noodle soup is a specific thing with a specific character. It's a clear broth with vegetables and tender egg noodles and chicken. And it's the kind of soup that feels like it's healing you from the inside out while you're eating it. To make it, you start with a good chicken broth, either homemade from simmering a chicken, as I described earlier, or a good quality store-bought broth. If you're short on time, you need about 8 cups. Bring it to a simmer and add 1 large diced onion, 2 cups of diced potatoes, 2 stalks of celery diced, and 1 cup of diced carrots. Cook this for about 15 minutes until the vegetables start to soften. Add 2 cups of cooked shredded chicken, 4 cups of fresh egg noodles, 2 teaspoons of salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Cook for about 10 more minutes until the noodles are tender. Finish with a 1/4 cup of fresh parsley chopped and stirred in just before serving. The broth should be clear and flavorful, and the noodles should be tender but not mushy. This is the kind of soup the Amish serve when someone's sick, when someone's had a baby, when someone needs comfort. And there's something humbling about realizing that this simple soup, made with basic ingredients, is more effective at making you feel better than almost anything else you could eat. The 8th dish is called baked beans, and I'm going to tell you that Amish baked beans are nothing like what you're probably thinking of. They're not sweet, they're not overly spiced, they're not some complicated casserole dish. They're honest beans baked slowly until they're tender, flavored with bacon and onion and a bit of molasses. And that's where the complexity ends. The beauty of this dish is in the restraint. Soak 1 pound of dried navy beans overnight. Drain them and put them in a large pot with 6 cups of fresh water. Bring to a boil, then reduce heat, and simmer for about 2 hours until the beans are tender. Drain them, reserving 1 cup of the cooking liquid. In a large baking dish, combine the beans with the reserved cooking liquid, 6 slices of bacon diced and cooked crispy, 1 large diced onion that's been cooked until soft in the bacon fat, 3 tablespoons of molasses, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of mustard powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of black pepper. Cover the baking dish and bake at 325 degrees for about 3 hours. Check it occasionally and add a bit more water if it's drying out. You want it to finish slightly saucy, but not soupy. The beans should absorb the flavors and become tender and slightly creamy inside, while the liquid reduces and becomes slightly syrupy. This is the kind of dish that tastes even better the next day, after the flavors have had time to settle and deepen. The 9th dish is called sour cream raisin pie, and this is where I have to tell you something that might sound crazy. This pie, which combines sour cream and raisins and eggs and spices, baked in a pie crust, is one of the best things you'll ever put in your mouth. I know how that sounds. Sour cream and raisins. Not exactly ingredients that scream delicious, but trust me on this. For a 9-inch pie, combine 1½ cups of raisins with 3/4 cup of hot water and let them soak for about 10 minutes until they're plump. In a separate bowl, whisk together 1 cup of sour cream, 3 eggs, ½ a cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of flour, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg. Drain the raisins and fold them into the sour cream mixture. Pour everything into an unbaked pie crust. Bake at 350 degrees for about 45 to 50 minutes until the filling is set, but still slightly jiggly in the center. The pie will seem almost custardy when it comes out of the oven, but it firms up as it cools. The flavor is sweet from the raisins, but balanced by the temps of the sour cream. The spices add warmth without overpowering anything. This is the kind of pie that makes you rethink what pie can be.